Vem aí o Codex Alimentário. Nós vamos trazer agora uma palestra inteira com uma especialista no assunto, uma nutricionista que alertou a população quanto a essa problemática. Ela sempre faz palestras, mas a que nós vamos trazer é de 2005, quando ela já alertava em 2005 para a data de 31 de dezembro de 2009. O que ocorre com o Codex Alimentário? O que é o Codex? Codex Alimentários é um termo em latim para um código de alimentação. O que é um código de alimentação? Você conhece muito bem o Código de Trânsito, conhece também o Código Penal, o Código Civil. Na verdade, código é um conjunto de leis específicas para um tipo de coisa. Você não faz só uma lei, faz várias leis para um só tipo de ação. Então, no lugar de ser uma lei, torna-se um código. Ou seja, as pessoas que cometem crimes, elas são...
And a whole host of other preventable diseases. Who will die? Who knows? Who will live? Probably those people who are wealthy enough and powerful enough to have their own pushers of clean food and nutrients. That's who will live. You and I? Probably not. Our children? Probably not. Our grandchildren? Probably not. So we're talking about food regulations that are in fact the legalization of mandated toxicity and undernutrition. It will be illegal if there's a famine in, wherever there's a famine, to ship high nutrient density biscuits to that country, and it will be illegal to distribute them. That's what we're talking about. Codex is big and it's bad, but it's not invulnerable. So the point is that we have to protect ourselves, and I believe that we have to regain global leadership, which we have lost, surrendered, squandered, sold. No global. No, we have sold. Just joining the World Trade Organization surrendered our sovereignty. However, parenthetically, I have a team of constitutional lawyers looking at the following question: are we members of the WTO? Because if you remember from high school civics, the way you get a treaty to be a real treaty is to have it ratified by a 2/3 majority of the Senate. And the way we got into the WTO was they passed a law allowing Bill Clinton to fast-track us into the WTO. That's not a treaty. We're not in the WTO. All right. Now, that's a piece of the battle.
Tell George.
We will tell George, but I don't think he's going to be relevant by the time we tell him. So that's a piece of it, but that's not going to save our lives right now, because do you know, picture in your mind a wasp or a bee trap where the insect voluntarily goes down the funnel and then can't get up out of the trap again? That's Codex. A regular law can be overturned, it can be repealed, it can be corrected by another piece of legislation. But once we become Codex compliant in any area, as long as we're members of the WTO, it can never be repealed, because we have lost the sovereignty to become un-Codex compliant as long as we're in the WTO. So it's like going down that funnel and not being able to get up out of it. So it's very important that we make sure that we do not become Codex compliant. Very important that we make sure that we do not become Codex compliant. But then we'll be hit with all those big trade sanctions and the country will be destroyed economically, right? No. Remember surprise? One of the principles of war? Remember mass, where you take your strength and put it against the enemy's weakness? Well, here's what we've done. We have a team of lawyers who have spent hundreds of hours with us pro bono. These are good guy lawyers. These two gentlemen and we have spent hundreds of hours studying Codex, understanding its weaknesses, a lot of weaknesses, and constructing a strategy which will take the sucker down. It will take it down. But I need you. You are people that other people come to for information about safe, healthy food and nutrients. You are ready-made dissemination points. You are the 1,000 million, 100 million points of light. Here's what is happening. Every country in the world has to be Codex compliant in order not to get hit by WTO trade sanctions, as I told you, if they're members of Codex in the WTO. And there are a few countries that are not, but I guarantee you they're not of any major significance. So, the question is, what does Codex compliance mean? Well, most people, most countries, most legislators believe that it means they have to adopt as their national standard on that particular subject what Codex ratified. But that's not the case any more than we're in the WTO. That's not the case either. What it means is that the format, the issues, and the subjects covered by a Codex guideline, standard, or regulation have to be addressed in the country's guideline, standard, or regulation on the same topic. So, what we have done is create the first of many alternative Codex guidelines. You can go to our website, www.healthfreedomusa.org, and you will see a little button on the upper right-hand side that says, Sign the Citizens Petition. Now, to briefly digress, a citizen's petition is not like a grocery store petition that you sign and you bring to somebody and you say, I have 200,000 signatures, and they dump it in the wastebasket, because in their mind, it's one signature, you and your friends wrote 200,000 names. No, it is a legal challenge to the policy of the United States government on Codex. It's called a citizen's petition. It's a legal challenge. We're suing the United States government, saying what you're doing is illegal, folks. Let us tell you how. We want hearings of fact. We want redress. We want correction. If we get what we want, that's dandy. If we don't get what we want, we have gone through a process called exhausting administrative remedies. We have made the case ripe for court. Okay, so I need you and everybody you know to sign the citizen's petition saying this is a bad policy, en masse. And you do this on the web, and you'll see the instructions, and we present the thousands and thousands and thousands of actual physical pages that we print out with people's signatures to the U.S. Codex Office and to the FDA, and they don't like that at all. But that's okay. However, this time, this is the Second Amendment of the Citizens Petition that we're asking you to sign. This time, the revised vitamin and mineral guideline is part of it. It's part of the lawsuit saying this needs to be U.S. policy. The more voices that say, this is what I want, and you work for me, Mr. and Mrs. Bureaucrat and Mr. and Mrs. Congressman, Mr. and Mrs. Senator, the more voices, the more weight. So step number one is read and sign the citizen's petition. Step number two is disseminate the information, the web link. Tell everybody you know. Put it out in your office. Get your patients, your friends, your neighbors, your suppliers to sign the citizen's petition. And your suppliers, the companies that you use, are going to tell you that you're out of your minds. They will tell you that Codex is not a problem. And they will tell you, anybody here have a dog? Okay. Dog owners know that you ask a dog to heel, sit, down, stay. That's Codex in this country and worldwide. Because the more people who are in Codex coma, the less trouble they have getting this through. So the NNFA, anybody here ever heard of the NNFA? Everybody's heard of the NNFA. Did you know that the members of the NNFA are not just health food stores and manufacturers, but include companies with names you may have heard? Pfizer, Merck, Monsanto, Bayer, BASF, Archer Daniels Midland, Chemet, Eastman Chemical, I could go on, GlaxoSmithKline Wellcome, Wyeth Arrest, you get the idea. Why? Because after DSHEA was passed and the nutrient business burgeoned, the pharmaceutical folks said, and they're not dumb, said there's gold in them thar pills. And they bought the means of production of many, many, many companies, and they bought the companies themselves. So they're in the nutrient business. What better way to kill the nutrient business, which is not nearly as profitable as the toxic chemical drug business, than to take it over? Works every time, right? CRN. Anybody here know about CRN? Council for Responsible Nutrition. Same members. They have lots of multi-level marketing companies. Same members. Okay? And they're serving their members' needs. They're saying, CRN is saying, yay, Codex is coming. It's going to protect us from those dangerous vitamins and minerals and herbs. And CRN is saying, it's fine. Go to sleep, lullaby, and good night. Everything's fine. And they use a report that they commissioned at a reputed cost of $800,000. A report, Sidley, Austin, Brown, and Root, a law firm in Washington, wrote a report for them. And it said, lullaby, and good night, everything's fine. It won't have an impact on the United States. Everything's fine. Sidley, Austin, Brown, and Root has one major client whose name you might know, Merck. Now, it's entirely possible that NNFA just did a spectacularly bad job of due diligence, or not. Anyway, the report says everything's fine, everything's dandy, no problem, we've got DSHEA. Yes, sure we do. Now let's talk about Australia. Remember, 5 laws before Congress to overturn DSHEA. And you can write to Congress on the website. The click of a mouse. I call it riding the freedom mouse.
It's called security.
Now, Congress uses a multiplier of 13,000 to 1. Every email, fax, phone call, letter. Don't write letters. They get decontaminated. They never get to Congress. Every email, fax, and phone call counts as 13,000 constituent opinions. They figure that if you write a letter or send an email, there are 12,999 lazy lunks who can't bother to get to the computer terminal to do the same thing, but they feel the way you do. Interesting. That's power, my friends. That's power. That's 13,000 to 1. So suppose we have 1 million people. Suppose we have 10 million people. Suppose we have 100 million people saying, don't you dare. Now, Congress has one rule above all others. Anybody know what it is? Get reelected. That's the primary rule, the prime directive, as Isaac Asimov would have called it. The prime directive is to get reelected. Now, DSHEA was passed, you may remember, by unanimous congressional consent. Was that because one morning all members of Congress woke up and said, I see the light. Nutrients are better than drugs. No. They said, oh, if I don't go along with this, I'll never be reelected to anything. You're at critical mass. Remember, we were out on the streets and we were up on our hind legs and we were making noise. And we were rallying and we were writing letters and we said, don't you dare take away my health freedom. Remember? And we won. Except we got fat, dumb, and lazy and stopped protecting ourselves. So now we're in the same place again. Except it's all food instead of just nutrients. So that's point number 1. Use the freedom mouse. Ride the Freedom Mouse. We've made it as easy as possible on the site. Sign up for the emails. I will never sell your information to anyone, I promise. I will never rent it. I will never share it. You'll only get email from me. And we need you to know what's going on. So I'll send you email blasts. I'll send you things that you can do. Or not. You know, it's your choice. Get everybody you know informed. Now, what else can you do? Well, we're going to write a series of Codex alternative guidelines. Everything bad in Codex will have an alternative guideline that turns it into a pro-health guideline. What have we done with the guideline, the vitamin and mineral guideline? You can see that because we have a markup copy that has their guideline crossed out and ours written in on the website. It's right there. What we've done is turn it into something, into a guideline that mandates biochemically, individually determined optimal health. And it's still Codex compliant. So we said, okay, now we need Congress to adopt this. And we need other countries in the world to adopt this. So Bert and I went to Washington, D.C., and we met with Dana Rohrabacher from Orange County, who said to us, he's a representative, he said, I believe in pesticides. I went, ugh. He said, I believe in GMOs. I went, ugh, ugh. He said, I believe in irradiation of food. I went, ugh, ugh, ugh. But, he said, I believe in your right to not be forced to eat foods that have been processed that way more than I believe in those technologies. I will take this on. We said, oh, that's really nice. And he said, now, we need a coalition. So we went across the aisle, or across the office building, to see Peter DeFazio's staff from Oregon, who is a liberal Democrat, whereas Rohrabacher is a Republican, a libertarian Republican. And DeFazio's on board. And we have large numbers of others who actually never heard of Codex before we told them about it. Never heard of Codex. We have called every health legislative aide in Congress, and we have said, what's your congressman's position on Codex? And they've said, blah. We have spoken to the trade legislative assistants. We've said, what's your congressman's position on Codex? And they've said, on what? They don't know. We had a congressional briefing set up on the 20th of September. I was going to address Congress, tell them about it. I thought that was cool. 10 days before, it became a briefing on something else. Another freedom click. You need to write to Congress on the site and tell them that they need a congressional briefing, by God, and tell them you want me to brief them. They don't know. They've never heard of it any more than the general public has heard of it. Gee, how'd that happen? Who knows? Every negative part of Codex can be overturned by a guideline, a regulation, or a standard that is positive. So we need your help, because the United States leadership in this guideline and all the positive guidelines to follow is what's going to literally save the population of the planet and save your jobs and your children and your families and mine. Thank you.
Thank you.